Tonight's going to be a special night. We've got a special guest coming in, a special interview with Mr. James Intveld. It's going to be a great night tonight. We definitely want you in the chat room tonight. We're going to be taking live questions. Right, so thanks for joining us. We'll be live here. We'll get the show going in a couple minutes. Thank you so much. Welcome all you geek enthusiasts and nerd aficionados. Masonic Vader tonight hosting the Nerd News podcast, brought to you by Malice Corp. Hey, this is a great night tonight, guys. We have a guest. We're not going to be talking nerd news. We're going to be actually talking real stuff. We have our guest tonight here is Mr. James Intveld. He is a director, actor, composer, everything else we'll be getting into in just a second. Before we jump into that, though, let's introduce everyone who's going to be on the cast. I'm your host, Masonic Vader. Again, for another week. It's amazing. They haven't kicked me off yet. Joining me this week on the live special cast, we have Mr. IC Zorro. How you doing, sir?
Fantastic. Looking forward to talking to Mr. James Intveld.
Simple and short. There you go. Also joining us tonight is Mrs. Malice. How are you doing tonight?
Great, very excited. I did just watch this movie again too, and it's actually one of my favorites. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
She is waiting for a virtual autograph. That's what she's waiting for. Shameless plug there. Also joining us with some special ties, which we'll talk about later, Mr. Nudie Rudy. How you doing tonight, sir?
Doing amazing. Very happy to be here. Hanging out with our very extra special guest. Yeah, good times.
And before I introduce the extra special guest, I just have to take a minute to comment. If you get to go back and watch this, he probably showed up for a brief second laughing very hard, because I do believe that's the first time he's actually heard your on-screen name.
That's correct.
We learn all kinds of things about family on this podcast.
Right now, we definitely want to introduce and welcome our special guest this week. I mentioned already the man, the myth, the legend. His name is James Intveld. He is an actor, a composer, a director, and most people know him by
musician in general.
Yeah, all that stuff. A lot of people, most people know him though as the voice and the savior of a 1990s Johnny Depp movie called Cry Baby, which is its 30th anniversary this year. And but he's done a lot of stuff. We're going to be talking everything about him. How you doing tonight, sir? Thank you for joining us.
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Thanks. Good to see you guys and good to be on your show.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you in here. This has been set up. Nudie Rudy kind of knows you.
I've actually known Nudie Rudy since he was a baby, so let's just leave it at that.
Since he was pooping in his diapers. Pooping.
Like he's not now.
I mean, he's not anymore, right? You guys are hanging out with him now. I don't see him all that often, but I guess you guys would know more about that than I would.
I've heard some stories that you probably wouldn't believe. So,
well,
I've actually think I've seen that facial expression that babies make that he's made once in a while he's pooping his pants. I mean,
yeah. You know how it is when you know somebody when they were just a little baby. Even when they grow up, you still see them that same way. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I'm hoping with Nudie Rudy's permission and potentially yours, as our editor does his magic to this. I know that there's some really cool pictures that someone's posted and sent to us. We might have to put that in some of that re-edited video later on, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah, I'm good.
Works fine for me.
Yes.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Excellent.
Disclose that everybody's danced around a bit. James here is my cousin, family, so I'm a little bit biased. Love the gentleman, so
Love you too,
yeah,
brother.
full disclosure.
So before we get things going, I just want to first of all thank our host, Malice Corp. It's been 4 years we've been rolling with these guys, and they are an awesome group. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to host our show every Friday night, 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, because we're not right now, or PDT, which means it's 11 o'clock on the East Coast, and you guys are about to party. So
Yeah.
thank you guys
Believe
so much
me,
for
I know
joining.
I'm on the East Coast. It's a problem.
Well, you're not partying. So anyways, yeah, check us out. You're here live on Twitch, but also make sure that you follow us on Stitcher, on iTunes, like us, subscribe to our stuff, give us reviews. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do me a favor, put some comments on some of those pictures, because trust me, they are precious pictures. Precious. So anyways, I hear someone cracking open a beverage. Is that you, sir? James, are you cracking one open?
Yeah, I'm gonna have myself a Guinness right now.
Well, cheers to you. Everyone's got to give the cheers. This is, yeah, there you go.
Cheers,
Okay, so straight off the top, we know that you haven't eaten yet because that's a meal.
It is a meal. It's actually
Like-
meal replacement, and it
Absolutely.
replaces pretty well, actually. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers,
So-
sir. Cheers. So,
But you have to back that up with a little bit of Jack Daniels off the plane, right? So
not a sponsor. Not a sponsor. And drink responsibly.
Maybe
I'm
someday.
not allowed to drink that stuff anymore.
Oh, the tales of 2017 for Mrs. Malice, and yeah. So anyway, so we've got we've got a live cast, our live stream we're following on Twitch, and I'll be checking out some things. Our cast has a number of questions. We're going to want to ask you questions. We're going to want to hear some cool stories. And it's just not going to be about Crybaby. Obviously, it's the 30th anniversary, so that kind of spawned everything here. But you've done a lot more than that. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to just pepper questions out to you. We want you to have fun, respond. And yeah, there you go. So I'm going to start off the question, because this is a nerd podcast, and we got to get the nerd question out of the way so then I can focus on our fine followers on Twitch. Now,
I've been waiting
as
for
most, what's that?
So I've been waiting for this one ever since you told me what it was going to be.
Yes, I might as well get it out of the way, because I've been waiting for this, man. So, obviously, as we've talked about, 30th year anniversary of Crybaby, you were the actual voice for all the songs that Johnny Depp was lip syncing pretty much in that show. Is that correct, sir? The movie?
that is correct. Yeah, even the ones that you'd be singing in the car or whatever along with the radio, that's also me.
I have to say, I mentioned this in the pre-show, I have watched this movie twice in my life. When it first came out, and I'll just have to say that...
When you were 3?
No.
I mean, that's 30 years ago.
Oh man, I've got some age on these other young
All right.
bucks on the cast. All right, so but thank you for the compliment, because I do look good. Anyways, if I do say so myself. But anyways, I saw the movie when it first came out, and then I have to say I saw it again. Let's just say in the last week, and let me tell you, it was just as hard to watch the first time it is this time. But the difference would be this. I'm gonna say this. I love it. It's so quirky. It's a 90s version of Grease, which I thought was. That's why I watched again. I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. What was more amazing though is actually understanding who was actually singing the music and getting to meet the guy tonight, because your voice is incredible. I do believe your songs carried that movie. But the question I have for you is this: was there a Star Wars kind of Darth Vader controversy? In other words, did they have David Prowse acting and doing all the to find out that on movie night his voice was dubbed over and we had the iconic Darth Vader? Did he know that you were going to be singing?
Oh yeah, he knew. Are you talking about Johnny? Did Johnny know that?
Yeah, John.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, originally, what had happened was after Johnny was cast in the film, I had heard about the project way before it was even filmed. In fact, I got a script. There was a guy sent me the script. He was a composer, and you know, I'm in the business, so everybody's always flinging around. Hey, there's a new script coming out. You know, they're looking for composers for this or that, or they're looking for actors for different things. And so I ended up getting an early script of Crybaby, and he says, "You got to read this thing." He says, "You know, you might want to audition for this film." And so I got it. I picked up a script, and I read the whole script, and I flipped out. I was like, "Man, this is crazy." The way that the script, you know, all the stage direction and everything that was in the original script, I thought this is going to be like a really over-the-top version of a movie like Grease. So I had originally seen that script, and then was trying to figure out a way to get an audition for it, and then it was put out in the trade papers that Johnny Depp was cast in this film. So I thought, oh, okay, well, Johnny Depp's going to do it, you know, whatever. And I kind of just forgot about the project. And I think I was over in Europe, and I was coming back from a tour, and I got home, and this is back in the day when we used to have answering machines, right? And I had about 20 voice messages on there, and it was all these people calling me from production company who wanted me to call them right back. And so I did, and they go, oh, there you are. Hey, you finally called us back, like, you know, 2 days later. And I said, yeah, what's up? They said, well, you need to get a voice to do to sing in this movie called Crybaby. And I'm thinking, I already know about this project, but I said, okay. They said, well, then they had auditioned Johnny originally, and when I went in to work on the film, I got to hear the demos that they did, and they got Johnny in there to try to sing these songs that they wanted. They didn't have the songs yet, but they just had us all sing a couple songs. Like there was a song, My Gal Is Red Hot, which is just an old 50s tune from Sun Records, and so they had Johnny audition with that, sort of the same stuff that I auditioned with. And I heard it, and I thought, well, he's singing great. I thought he sounded pretty good on it. But they said, well, we're looking for somebody. This is going to be a theatrical thing. They said, so it needs to be a lot bigger than just a guy singing along with the track. I said, okay. So they had a lot of direction that they wanted for that. So I basically auditioned with whatever they did. They had about 100 guys that they were looking at, and then it kind of got pared down to about 10. And then from that 10, it got pared down to 3. And the 3 were, it was me, Billy Burnett, and a guy named Colin Winsky, who was also a rockabilly singer, who's passed away now. But at the time, they took us all into the studio and had us audition. We did some tracks for it. And I guess what happened was they brought these tracks to John, and they said to him, look, we're not going to tell you who these guys are, but which one of these guys to you sounds like Crybaby? You know, you wrote the script, but which one of these guys sounds like Crybaby? And like 2 days later, I get a call, and they're like, okay, John picked your voice. You're going to be the voice of Crybaby. And then all of a sudden things changed. And then I'm coming to all these meetings and meeting up with everybody. And that's basically how that all kind of came together. But Johnny actually did try to sing originally, and it was pretty good, I thought. You know, it wasn't
okay, so
it wasn't as over the top as what I had to do for the film, but you know,
right.
I mean, he's
well,
a
for
musician,
film,
so he sounded pretty good.
For film actors, generally less is more, and John Waters is known for being big and theatrical. And so that was one of the questions I was going to ask. John Waters wrote and directed this thing, and he picked your voice. I was going to ask how you came to his attention, but knowing that you went through an audition process and he picked your tape out of 3, did he ever tell you what it was about your audition tape that caught his attention?
Well, what had happened was they had the song Teardrops Are Falling, the one that I sing in a high falsetto. And they brought that song in, and it was an original song done by, I think it was like an old doo-wop, like a black doo-wop group. And the guy sings it in falsetto. And when I went in to do the track, they said, here, you know, they gave me the songs, and they said, come back and do these songs. And I came back in, and when they had me sing it, I did it in a high falsetto like that. And I guess the other 2 guys that auditioned for it didn't do that. They just sang it in a regular voice and kind of just went along with it. And they just did whatever they did. But I kind of sort of understood the script, I think, a little bit more, maybe because of the fact that, maybe because I have a background from, theatrical background. I was thinking, he's not going to want it to just be kind of watered down. He needs this thing to be like, you know, really.
It's John Waters. He wants over the top.
He wants it more dramatic, and he wanted it to be funny, you know. So anyways, I did that, and then he heard my version of Red Hot, and I guess there was just, and then the crazy thing that happened was he picks my voice, and they said, okay, and then they tell him who I am and what I do. And like 2 days later, They go, John wants to meet you. And I show up to his shop. I show up to his office, right? And I walk in, and I've got a pompadour and a leather jacket on him. And this is the way I dressed back then. And he looked at me like, what the fuck? You know, this guy is like, this guy is
Did you show up in costume?
Well, yeah, exactly. You know, it's like, it's just the way that I was dressing back then. And so we kind of hit it off really, really well. And he, at the time, he said to me, man, he goes, I really wish I could cast you in this film, but we've got, you know, Johnny Depp, and he's a big star, even though he had only done 21 Jump Street, but he was pretty massive at the time for like all the teenagers and stuff. And he had a lot of heat on him at the time. And so he says, I'm going to put you in the movie as a sidekick. And then what happened was, when we ended up all meeting up together, he said to me, I can't put you in the movie next to Johnny because you guys are very similar. He said, at the time, you know, he said, so they didn't end up putting me in there because he goes, I can't make you the sidekick because you don't really look like the sidekick. He said, so I never got a part in the film. But I was really happy to be doing the music for it. I really had a really good time doing it. You know, we cut a lot of songs for that film. I think there's 5 tunes that are the main songs that I sang in the film, but we must have cut about 20 songs. And the reason why that happened was the people that were doing, Tim Sexton, who was the guy who was in charge of all the music, he said, John doesn't want to hear these demos. You know, people like Carl Perkins and everybody was sending in demos for Crybaby. And John said, I got to hear Jimmy sing them. He goes, I don't want to hear it from anybody else's voice. So we had to go in and cut all these songs to get to figure out what was going to happen in the film. And so that's sort of
generate
how,
too much
how it
and then
worked
cut
out.
it down.
What's that?
Generate too much and then cut it down to just what you need.
Well, no, he didn't want to just go, I like this song, we're going to use this song, because there was a different song that needed to go in different scenes. And so people were writing specifically for different scenes. And then he was like, well, I've heard the demo. That's Carl Perkins singing the demo. I need you to be singing the demo so I can see if I like the song. So it was great for me because I was in the studio almost every day cutting demos. So for me, that's great because now I'm working all the time. So it was pretty cool to be able to have that much work to do, you know. I really enjoyed the fact that we were kind of sort of all working together.
All right, so we got a question for question from the chat room really quick, and then we'll get one of the cast. HJZ Grok is asking you, did John Waters oversee the songs you sang, and what came first, filming or singing?
He was never really in the studio. I mean, he was there one time. I'm trying to remember why he was there. Oh, they wanted to shoot at the time when the movie was going to be released. They were thinking that the movie was going to do really, really well in the States, and it actually didn't do that well in the States. It did really, really well in Europe, but in the States it kind of didn't take off. Not as big as they thought it would. So before the movie came out, they decided, hey, we should probably get you a recording contract. And so they had me on Universal. And they set up a record deal for me because they thought if the movie comes out and its soundtrack goes big, then they're going to have to follow up with more stuff of me singing. So we got together and we actually shot a music video for Doing Time for Being Young, I believe is what it was. So I got together with John, and he kind of wanted to see what I would do on stage and how I would move and what I would do. And that's the only time we worked together. But when I was in the studio cutting the stuff, John really didn't oversee any of that. We kind of were in there doing it on our own. And he was pretty cool about us doing that. So that's kind of how it worked out. That was the first question. The question was John there? And the other question was?
What came first, the filming or the singing?
Well, what happened was they'd say, we want to shoot this scene. So they scheduled the sessions around what was going to happen next in their shooting schedule. So they'd say, oh, we're going to do the scene, the King Crybaby scene. So we would go in and we would cut the track. Then we would send the track to John. He would approve it. If he didn't approve it, then it would come back and we would make some changes. And then once it was signed off, once he signed off on it, then they would take it onto the soundstage in Baltimore and they would shoot it. And then they'd say, okay, we're working on this piece now because this is the next one they want. So that's basically how we did it. I would sing it. We would, cut all the tracks, get it all done. We would send it to them. They would give it to a girl named Lori Eastside, who was the choreographer, and she would work with Johnny on, how he would move and how the steps that he was going to do for the scene. And that's basically how it went down.
Wait, I knew it was set in Baltimore. Are you telling me it was also shot in Baltimore?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. John loves to shoot in Baltimore. All those things, Turkey Pot or whatever, all these different little locations are all that stuff that's in his neighborhood. The only thing that they did out here was a reshoot for the end of the film where they're doing the little Chicky Run thing at the end there, kind of like the grand finale of the final scene of the movie, where the cars are charging at each other. They had shot that originally also in Baltimore, but they needed to do some pickup shots, and they ended up doing it at the Disney Ranch out here in LA. And I was there. I rode out there that day and watched them film that. So, but most of the movie, the rest of it was really shot in Baltimore.
All right, so let's go to our next cast person to kind of pepper it around. Mrs. Malice, you're next on my chart. What kind of question do you have for James here?
Real stick with that car scene. Was it really both of the actors on top of the car when they were chasing or when they were driving at each other? Because I'm assuming they were both driving at each other too.
You mean you're talking about did we have any stunt people in there?
Yeah, was there any stunt people in that?
Well, the way that it's really shot pretty well, I mean, I've directed films and I know about shooting action and stuff. If you look at the movie, you don't really see a lot of stunts. You don't really literally see them flying through the air. So there's no real stunts going on. It's basically Johnny hanging onto the car and the other guy hanging onto the car. And then, they shoot the scene where, I mean, when I saw the description of that scene where she flies out, she's on a motorcycle on the back of the bike, and then her dress rips, and then they hit a bump, and she flies through the air, and he catches her. When I first saw that direction in the script, I thought, how are they going to shoot that? But they did. They figured a way out to make it kind of work. But since it's a John Waters movie, it doesn't have to be, it isn't like a 007 film or something. The stunts didn't really have to be
paper realistic.
No, everybody's just buying the fact that we all know it's a hoax anyways. So it's just, that was the beauty of it. You can get away with anything when you're in a John Waters setting because of the fact that it's all kind of bizarre anyways. But there wasn't anything like that. There wasn't any kind of heavy, things on set where they, said, okay, we're going to do these big stunts now. So none of that really happened.
Awesome. Hey, let me get a couple of these smaller questions in the chat. Then we'll go to Nudie next. Couple small questions, really quick ones. I think the answer probably was Mess5150, our phenomenal editor, wanted to ask if any of the songs ever ended up elsewhere. And then Cannon Fodder 691 wants to ask, asking how long does it usually take for you to come up with a new song?
Those songs did not end up in anything else because they were written specifically for the film, except for the ones that were already old vintage songs. A few of those things were remakes of old tunes from the 50s, but all the original ones really couldn't do anything with them because they were written specifically for the film. Now they ended up having a Broadway version of Cry Baby, and they ended up getting Desmond's Child and all these different people to write songs for it. In fact, Desmond's had me come in to sing his demos, and they didn't end up using any of his songs for the Broadway play. But I'll tell you, Desmond's Child, his songs were so good. They were even better than the Cry Baby songs. And they never ended up doing anything with those songs. But they did use different music for the Broadway version So those songs basically didn't do anything but stay on that soundtrack. Now that soundtrack was a top 10 soundtrack in Europe. So when I would go on tour and I would go to Europe, everybody had that album. They would bring it and they'd want me to sign it. It did really, really well over there. It did a lot better in Europe, I believe, than it did in the States. How long does it take me to write a song? Well, some of my songs have been written in a half hour, and some other ones I got to beat them to death. You know, I mean, sometimes it'll take months. I'll go over something and kind of put it away and bring it back and sort of get a clear mind and be able to finish something. So they're all different. There isn't any kind of specific format, but I'll tell you, when you have to write for a purpose, like somebody says, hey, you need to come up with a song, and we need it tomorrow for a session, it's like anything else, you know. You sort of just pony up to whatever you need to do because you don't really have the luxury of the time. So when you're just writing for yourself or for other people and there's no time limit on it, you'll kind of drag it out. Just like anything else, when you need to have it done, you just go in and you work it, and try to get it as good as you can.
Oh yeah, some of us work best under pressure. I get that.
Absolutely,
Hey.
I agree. I mean, I'm like that.
All right, Nudie Rudy, man. You are up, sir. What question do you have for family?
So, Jamesy, man, you mentioned a bunch of extra demos you cut for the movie that were, specific songs written for Crybaby. Do you still have any copies of those? Are they floating around anywhere? Those would be really cool to check out if they still existed anywhere you could, access.
I would like to.
I'm sure that they probably are somewhere. I'm sure that the production company probably still has them somewhere. Now, I happen to have copies of a lot of it. They're all on cassette because back then we were using cassettes. This is not, you got to remember, this is 1989 and we're making this stuff up. So I have a bunch of them, and I even had some of the demos that got sent to me, that like the ones from Carl Perkins and all these other cats. People were like blowing my phone up because they were saying, hey, I got a song for the movie. Because once I was hired to do it, then everybody kind of knew that I was doing it in town. And so everybody was trying to get in on that because they figured if they could get through me, then I could influence them, the director like John, to, hey, this is a good song. And then they would get a song. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, as you guys know, you guys are in the business. It's like everybody's got a script, everybody's got a song. And
it's very generous of you.
They're all trying to pitch their stuff, and so that's basically how that went. But I do have a lot of those. Demos.
Man, I gotta check them.
I think that's gonna end up in someone's house pretty soon. I think. I'm gonna go back to our.
Might happen.
I'm gonna go back to our chat room. We got a couple extra good questions here. L_Oni_ wanted to ask you if you did any kind of collaboration with Iggy Pop on any of the songs, or was he just there in the acting capacity? And then another one that just another one that popped in from Squirrel Boy _ Nemo. What's your favorite guitar, James? And do you have any preferred tonal wood or brand?
Okay, well, the thing with Iggy, me and Iggy both were connected through Bug Music, which was our publishing company at the time. And we hung out on the Crybaby set a little bit. So I knew Iggy just a little bit.
That's worth the job right there. That's just worth the whole job.
And Iggy was just a badass, and he was great to be hanging around with, out in Baltimore on set. And I'd see him once in a while after that, but I couldn't say I've seen Iggy in probably 20 years. It's kind of the way it works in a business. If you're working on certain things and you cross paths, and then you're working on another project, you may run into somebody again. It's the same with like me and Johnny. We don't see each other. We would run into each other at different times in our lives, and I think the last time everybody saw each other was at the 25th anniversary. We had a thing, the Johnny Ramone summer film thing that they do down there at the that cemetery in Hollywood. They do that. They do They do a show, the Forever Cemetery, the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. They do a thing every year, and I guess Crybaby was one of Johnny Ramone's favorite movies. So every year they pick a movie. So they did play that And there's, you can see it on the internet. You see a bunch of us on a panel together. It's Johnny Depp, me, Ricky Lake, Tracy Lords, bunch of people from the cast. We're all up there with John Waters, and we're all sitting there together. I think there's plenty of pictures of it and that's the last time I think we all saw each other, at least when I saw everybody together.
Your other question was, what's your favorite brand of guitar, and do you prefer tonal wood or a brand?
Tonal wood. What is the question? Tonal wood. What is
I think they're asking if you like a cherry wood fretboard, a walnut, something like that.
Oh, I got what you're saying. Well, for me, I play a lot of Fenders and Gibsons. You know, basically, I have a few Gretsch guitars as well. I would say when I was younger, I was really like a Gretsch guy. I love the Gretsches. I played 6120 and had a few other ones.
Classics, yeah.
Tennessean, and I like the Duo Jet. And then I was always into Gibson acoustics, like a J200s and stuff like that. And I have a couple Gibson acoustics that I play that I like. But I like Fender Tellys and Strats too. It's just a different thing. I don't have a specific guitar. I'm not like Springsteen, who's basically known for playing that Esquire. Well, it's actually a Telly body with an Esquire neck. And so everybody, you know, there's people that are kind of associated with the kind of guitar they play. And I don't really have that, I think. But maybe it's the Gibson, you know, maybe it's the Gibson J160 that I had customized. That's what I like. I like all the bodies. Go ahead.
When I think rockabilly and stuff, I generally picture like big Les Pauls, you know?
Well, Les Paul is a solid body. The big ones are, well, I had to play a few Les Pauls. You know, I played guitar with John Fogerty for 3 years on the road. And is that right? 2009 to, something like that, 3 or 4 years. And I had to have a whole bunch of guitars when I was playing with him because he wanted all these different sounds for different songs. So, you know, I was carrying like 6 guitars in each one of our rigs. We had basically 2 setups, one that would go to Europe, and if we were in Europe, they would take the other one and send that over to Australia or whatever. But I would have to carry 6 guitars in each of my setups. So I played a bunch of different things. So I don't really have a specific thing, but if somebody said to me, if you could have one guitar, what would it be? It'd probably be a Gibson acoustic. And if I could only have one, an electric guitar, it would probably be a Telecaster.
My daughter.
So if you're joining us just now, you're finding out we have a special guest here on the All New Nerds podcast, Mr. James Intveld. Singer, songwriter, actor, producer, director, and of course the voice of Crybaby, the 1990s Johnny Depp movie. I see. Do you have a question you want to throw at him? While I'm getting a couple of these from the Twitch feed. If you're following us, by the way, on Twitch, please put some questions there. We're getting to as many as we can today.
Yeah, James. So probably the last Crybaby specific question that I've got anyway. I noticed that a lot of the singing that you did in that seemed kind of Elvis impersonator-ish. Like that was very much the tone of it. Was that intended to be Elvis impersonator-ish? And keep in mind, I have heard a little bit of story from Nudie Rudy about your family ties to Elvis.
Okay, well, the deal, it's in this, when you would read the script, you know, I probably still have one somewhere in a box. You know, the direction on the script was the fact that he was sort of a over the top kind of an Elvis singer. So they wanted it to be kind of like, there was a play called Bye Bye Birdie, which they had a guy that was sort of like an Elvis guy, but he was more quirky. So I think what we were trying to do with the voice in that film was to use kind of like a big Elvis voice, but also kind of go a little bit more how like John Travolta did in Grease, you know, which was more like a high-pitched voice. So I just kind of used both ends of the range to kind of sort of make it's almost like very intentional, over the top kind of just to give
John
that
Waters
vibe.
type of thing.
Yeah, John wanted. I mean, I would do something in the studio, and then if John laughed, and said, "Oh, I love it," and then you knew you were on the right track, And
I'm
John
just
brought me
picturing a
back.
laugh coming from that pencil thin mustache,
Yeah, John brought me back for another film. He did a crying, was it a Dirty Shame, and I'm singing the song "Let's Go Sexin'" in that film, and he basically said, "I need you to come back and be in this film." We had dinner one night, and he said, "I got this new movie that I'm doing with Johnny Knoxville and Chris Isaacs." He says, "And I want you to come in and sing the title of this." He goes, "I think it'd be perfect for you to do that sort of that crybaby voice thing." He says, "That would be great for this." And so I went in and we did "Let's Go Sexin'" for that, and that was the one time that John was actually in the studio as I was performing. So it was great to have him in there for direction. If he wanted anything different, he would say, "Hey man, more of this," or "Do this," or he would, if he was
Right.
laughing and digging it, you knew you were going in the right direction. So that's basically how we came up with the vocal. I would say that I had a lot of freedom at the time when we were doing that. I think because of the fact that when I came into John's office looking like I did, and he knew that I was deeply rooted in the music, he sort of thought like, well, this dude's already there, and then they ended up getting Dave Alvin involved in it as well as one of the producers. And so they were just trying to bring in people that knew that kind of roots music. And I think they kind of sort of dealt with it more like, let's just get some guys in here that know this genre and let's just kick it up a few notches. And I think that's basically what happened.
Nice. Real quick before we get back to some more chat room questions. Yeah, I mean, you talked about your range. And I mean, you had crazy control of that falsetto. Like, I spent a lot of years in choir. That falsetto was impressive. And then I've also heard your cover of Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison Blues, which that gets down to my range, to my bass range. You've got quite a range. Is that just good genetics, or are you doing crazy vocal exercises every day? What do you do?
I don't know. Back then, I wasn't doing anything. I was just I was partying a lot, that's for sure. But I don't think that had any help. That wasn't helping anything. But it's just sort of like one of those things where you just kind of go, "Oh, this is what it needs to happen." And I remember doing that as well. I did that. The funny thing about that song, the Folsom Prison Blues track, was I would have not normally have sung it in that key. I probably would have done it just a little bit higher, which is probably closer to what my range is. But they sent me the track in that key. And so I was like, well, I gotta have to sing it. So I had to sing it, and I went in there in the morning and sang it,
because I would pin you as a tenor, maybe baritone, and that Folsom Prison Blues, it sounded like he was getting right to the bottom of your range.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably just a low E. I could probably go down to a D sometimes too. But anyways, at the time, they sent me that track, and they said, "We want you to do this song," and I was, they sent me the track and it was already cut. The only thing that I did on that track was I put my guitar on there, my lead, the solo, and my vocal. So that's how that went down. But I think the thing with the stuff for the film, there was just some levels that needed to be hit. And Please, Mr. Jailer, they just wanted to go crazy. When John Waters says, "You just got to go nuts at the end," then that's really kind of what, it sort of has more to do with the theatrics of something like that. That movie is a little bit more like a musical than it is just straight out singing the song. And I think the fact that I was into all that kind of stuff, I think really kind of made us a good match to work together. I was originally cast in another movie called Johnny Suede that Brad Pitt ended up doing. It was a movie, and it was a lot like Crybaby movie. And I was originally cast in that film because they brought me in and they said, "Can you sing these Ricky Nelson songs?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I sat down with an acoustic guitar and I sang these songs. And I did all the acting, and they said, "Yeah, we love you. We want you to do this film." And a week later, I get a call from my agent that said, "There's a problem, and the director wants to talk to you." And he called me. Tom DiCillo was the director, and he said, "Dude, I'm sorry." He goes, "The producers will not let me make the movie with you. They have this guy, Brad Pitt. We just did Thelma and Louise, and he's like the hot property." And
I feel like I've heard of him.
Yeah. So anyways, that happened on that film. So there's just all these kind of little crazy little, backstories to all this stuff, But, I just was fortunate to be able to do whatever I got to do. In this business, I've been doing it for a really long time. I got 100 of those kind of stories, when it comes to like, even Johnny Depp was looking at me like, he goes, "This is just crazy that I'm doing this movie." He says, "I can't dance." He goes, "I don't know how to move." He goes, "And they got me doing this choreography, and he was just like spinning out, when we were sitting down talking about this kind of stuff, because he was sort of commiserating with me about it. And I said, "Oh, it's fine. You're going to be great in it, And so it was interesting to be on set and watch everybody going through their own trials and feelings. And I also think that at one point, I think Johnny was a little bit worried. We hadn't met yet, and he was already receiving the tracks, and people were talking about me. And then he thought, well, is this guy going to be a jerk or what? And then I ended up showing up, and we ended up having a private meeting before we went out on set together and stuff. They said, "Johnny wants to have a little, a meeting with you before we go on."
Mr. Depp would like to see you in his trailer.
Yeah. Anyways, so we met up and we kind of looked at each other and nodded, and he could tell I wasn't going to be like, "Hey, who are you?" or whatever. We were both cool and into all the same shit. We were both cool. In fact, we just hung out. We just, the nights that we were there, we would go out every night. We'd go to nightclubs, hang out and have some drinks, so we had a really good time together. But I think the initial thing was he's probably worried because, it's terrible when you got to be in a film and then you're not the voice of your character. As an actor, you want to be able to sort of, you don't really want someone to lip sync for you. It happened to me in another movie. There was a movie called Wild at Heart. Nicolas Cage had hired me to come in and teach him how to sing like Elvis for the 2 songs he does in Wild at Heart. And so I was happy to come in and work with him because Nick knew me. He had come to see me play and knew what I did and how I sang. And so he said, "Hey man, maybe you can come in and work with me." So I did. And then we went into the studio. On the day of the session, they brought in Elvis's band. All the guys in Elvis's band, Ronnie Tutt, James Burton, Glendy Harden, Jerry Schiff. And he walked into the room and just about shit himself. It was like, he's such an Elvis fan. And to be able to see all of Elvis's band in there, and here's Nick going into the vocal booth to sing, and he's just freaking horrified. And here's Nicolas Cage, who's a big actor, a big star. You'd think that that's like no big deal, but it just goes to show you, it's hard sometimes when you're not used to that kind of stuff. What's that?
I gotta say, we have a long-running Nicolas Cage thing on this podcast, and it is goddamn amazing that you brought him up. He gets brought up like every goddamn episode. It's incredible.
Every
Is it
it's unreal.
Is it the 7? What do they call that?
No, that's Kevin Bacon.
Zero
Yeah, I know,
degrees.
but we have it's now the Nicolas Cage version.
Yeah. Oh man,
Bacon deal.
It's uncanny.
About Nick Cage too, so it was great because I knew he was listening to it.
Yeah. And I know that our host Masonic Vader has a bunch more chat questions lined up for you, so let's
go. It's all good. I'm gonna go off on a tangent. You guys leave me alone.
Oh, hey,
go ahead.
We're gonna go as long as you want to go, just so you know.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll go as long as my battery lasts because I've had it said low battery twice because I'm using this headset, I'm not plugged in. It's the iPhone curse.
Yeah.
So the other night I was doing a live Facebook live thing, and at 2.5 hours into it, and it finally they pulled me off the air. I guess I guess I went too long for him. But I did another one yesterday for Europe, and it was 3 hours, and I had no problem. So you never know. Anyways,
So one of the people in the chat room, Peteopolis, asks, who would be in your dream jam band? Do you even? I don't know if you even like jam bands, but who would be in yours?
well, my brother, he would be playing drums.
Yeah.
Who else would be in that? Stevie Ray Vaughan, probably. Who else? Who else would be in that? Probably Duck Dunn on bass, Ray Charles on organ, Jerry Lee Lewis on piano.
Not on piano. Okay, Ray Charles on organ, not piano.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
Jerry Lee Lewis on piano.
Yeah.
Ray on
Boogie
organ.
Woogie. Yeah.
Ray Charles, he's just a soulful cat. I'm just throwing out stuff right off the top of my head that I think would be really, really cool. I get Elvis to sing harmony with me. It'd be pretty cool.
A very good question that Squirrel Boy threw out there was, in terms of your musical life, what is the craziest backstage story you have?
Oh my God. You really want to hear one?
Oh yeah.
Actually,
As long as you keep it enough to where Twitch won't be revoking our license anytime soon.
yeah, and that's a good question. That was one of my questions too.
Well, then I'm gonna make it kind of a PG version.
We're good with the R.
No. R is okay.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, I did a tour with Jerry Lee Lewis. Y'all know who he is, right? Everybody
Absolutely.
knows you guys know him, so
Of course.
okay.
The Killer.
So, anyways,
Fuck.
the Killer. About 1989, I got a call from his manager. He said, "Hey, man, we would like you to open all the shows on the West Coast." I said, "Yeah, I'd love it." So we went on tour together, and every night we play a show. And his wife Carrie was on the road with him, and she kept going, James, we got to do a thing on to one of those magazines where I can make some money. We'll say like we're having an affair on Jerry, and we're on the road. And so she used to just really like kind of get me all kind of pumped up in front. Like I'd be hanging out and she'd be talking to me the whole time and kind of try to get Jerry jealous all the time. It was one of those things where she was just trying to, kind of pit him up against me just because she was mad at him for whatever reason. So one night we were doing a show, and the show was kind of one of those variety shows, because a lot of them were just us on tour doing nightclubs. And we did this big show, and on the show it was like Fats Domino, Kool and the Gang. It was like this
Jesus,
whole
man, who haven't you played with?
All these bands. So we're Jerry Lee's opening band, and we go to this festival, and I said, well, we're clearly not going to play and open for Jerry because we're just on tour with him, but he's going to close the show here, and we're not going on after Fats Domino. So I don't know what happened with the promoter. He decided to go back to tell Jerry, hey, we just want to let you know your opening act, James Intveld, is not going to play tonight, which was the wrong thing to say to Jerry Lee, because if they would have not said anything, Jerry would have gone on, he wouldn't have known. But the fact that the guy told him that I wasn't going to play, Jerry turned to him and said, if he doesn't play, I don't play. So all of a sudden, they went to the manager, and the manager tried to talk to Jerry. He goes, no, this is it. If he doesn't play, I'm not going on. So the promoter came over to me. He goes, well, I guess you're going to have to do something because Jerry's not going to go on if you don't. He goes, you're going to go up there and do one song, and you're going to get right off, and we're going to get Jerry up. I said, okay, yes,
Just
sir.
go up
I'm
and sing
sorry.
Happy Birthday.
Yeah. So my band got all set up. We went out there. We did one song real quick. We were done. They brought Jerry out. Jerry plays the show. He's done. He's in the dressing room. Me and the guys are all in the van, ready to leave. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to the room. I'm going to tell Jerry, hey, thanks for sticking up for us and getting us on. So I walked backstage, and Jerry's back there with a few people. And I said, hey, Jerry, sir, I just want to say thanks so much for sticking up for us and letting us play tonight. And he turned to me like he was looking right through me, like he was going to kill me. And he walks up to me and he says, are you fucking my wife?
Oh my Oh my God.
And I said, no. And I said, no, sir, I'm not. He goes, you sure you're not fucking my wife? And he started yelling. Now he's about this close to my face. And I'm thinking to myself, in about 3 seconds, me and Jerry Lee Lewis are going to be rolling around on the ground in here over this.
Just don't
I
break
said,
his hands
"No,
with your
I'm-
face.
I said, no, I'm not. He goes, I want you to know my wife does not run my show. I want you to know that. Now you tell me, are you fucking my wife? Are you fucking my wife? I said, no, I am not. And he took about 5 seconds and just stared at me. And he said, would you fuck my wife?
Oh my
And I'm
God.
thinking, how do you answer that? So then I didn't say, I go,
Sir, yes,
I go,
sir.
no. He goes, I'll give you $100 if you fuck my wife.
That's a
And
trap.
I'm sitting there backstage thinking, what is going to happen now?
Oh my God. I'm like 300.
Then he puts his arm around me and he says to me, you know, you're a good looking son of a bitch, and walks out the door with me and says goodnight, waves to me. And I walk to the van and I get in the van. The guy goes, all cool. I said, you guys will not believe it just happened.
Apparently, I have to fuck his wife. I don't know.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you were touring with him. I think that was the same year that his movie came out, Great Balls of Fire. I think was '89 as well with Dennis Quaid.
I got
Little
a great
nerd.
story about
I think that was random news. I bet you someone could check that out. I think that might be right.
You know, I got to watch the movie with Jerry Lee when he got the private screening. I was in the room with him. He sat right behind me. I was sitting next to the gal Tracy, who was my wife at the time, sitting next to me, and him and his wife sat right behind me. James Burton, the guitar player, was sitting next to us, and we watched the whole movie. And when the movie was over, we kept pinching each other, thinking like, "Oh, this movie was not that great," and we thought he was going to lose his mind. And as soon as they turned the lights back on, and his wife goes, "Well, honey, what do you think?" And we all expected him to go, "This movie sucks. That's not what I'm like." And he goes, "I thought it was great." And we got up and we left. And he didn't like it, but he said that in front of all of us. We watched that movie, and he was sitting right behind me, man. It was a trip to see that, you know, because that movie was kind of a weird movie, and he didn't like it, but I did get to go see the original screening, and I was invited by him and his wife, you know, because they'd send me Christmas cards every year. I get Christmas cards from him, John Waters, you know, all these different people that I know in the business, and we're all kind of chummy with each other. You know, something like that comes up, they know I want to go see it. So, anyways,
Did any of those
Great Balls
Christmas
of
cards
Fire.
come with $100 in them?
No, there's never ever any money involved in any of that stuff.
Anybody's wife.
It's
Yes,
Yeah.
and I was
room
correct.
key.
I
What?
was correct. Yes, it was
It was the same
89. Great Balls of Fire. Yes, sir. Mrs. Malice, what question do you have loaded up for James here?
Everyone keeps stealing my questions. Like, I don't have any anymore because everyone else keeps taking my questions.
That goes to
All right,
show
so
you how good
Squirrel
your
Boy-
questions are.
Squirrel
I
Boy's
mean-
gonna take. Go for it. Go for it.
I can think of one where I can give you another crybaby one. How was it working with Ricky Lake? What is she like?
Well, Ricky Lake was great. She was a great gal. You know, there's a video that they did on me, that one that I was talking about that we did in case the movie became a huge and they wanted it. They made it for MTV and it came out doing Time for Being Young. And Ricky and Tracy Lords, they were both in that video with me. And I knew Ricky after that. We actually kind of dated a little bit. She came to see me at a couple of gigs. And at the time, after that movie was done, she was a struggling actress. She was trying to get a gig. She was living in a valley in one of those converted garage.
Pre-talk show.
You know, somebody put that, you know how people would take a garage and they turn it into a little apartment? She was living in one of those, and she was auditioning. She didn't have anything going on. So she was just sort of trying to make stuff happen. And so we kind of went out for a little bit. In fact, it was interesting because she brought her parents and her sister to one of my shows at Club Lingerie one night. So, and I still know Ricky. I haven't seen her now probably in a couple years, but we try to stay in touch, and we do see each other once in a while. And I've been over to the house, but like I said, it's been a few years now since I've seen her. But you know, she went through so many different changes, you know, and things that had happened. And she had a big career, and she's a wonderful person. She's really just like you see her on TV, and that's really who she is. She's a really cool gal.
Oh, that's cool to know.
Yeah. So we're still friends. In fact, I think when I was doing my live stream the other day, somebody said she was on there for a second. So she, you know, she's still kind of watching, but we run into each other once in a while at somebody's sort of get-togethers. If somebody has like a party or whatever, we'll see each other. But she's a beautiful spirit. She's a really wonderful person.
All right, we got a question from Squirrel Boy in the chat room. What is your favorite memory from working with Crybaby there?
My favorite memory working on Crybaby. Let's see. God, there's a lot of them. I'm trying to think right now. I've never had a question. I think my favorite memory was one night, me and Johnny Depp, after he was shooting, we went to a strip joint, and we were hanging out, and everybody thought that we were brothers. And they kept calling me Jimmy Depp and Johnny Depp, and I don't know. We just had a great time that night with all the people that were there. They ended up closing the place down and leaving some of the people that they wanted to have hang out with us, and we just hung out all night with these people. That's probably a really good memory that I had. It wasn't really about being on set, but it was something that was personal, that was fun. You know, we had a good time. We were young guys back then, and it was a lot of fun, you know.
Yeah, just the camaraderie of the set.
Just camaraderie and hanging out, and everybody's career was just getting started, you know, including Johnny's, even though he had already had some success. But, you know, nobody really knew at that time what was happening. Everybody was pretty, you know, just honest and innocent. And, you know, when you go back to those times and you look at those years and the things you didn't know yet, it's pretty fun, you know, to think about those days, you know, when the unknown is happening. I mean, back then, he had made that movie Crybaby. We hadn't even made it yet, you know. He hadn't done a film. So, you know, we were all just kind of just hanging out. In fact, funny thing was I was just moving the other day, and I found a little piece of paper. It says Johnny, and it was his number at the time. And I remember writing that. I remember him writing that down and giving it to me. And it's funny that I had it in one of my boxes of old stuff, you know. So you see that and you go, oh, this is like a different time, an innocent time when, you know, people were just trying to get things going in their lives. So that's a pretty cool memory.
Awesome. Now, because we are a nerd show, we've got some questions we usually like to ask our guests. We got 5 questions. We don't tell you anything about it because of the simple fact that we want you to kind of speak from your heart in a sense and not be loaded up with it. And we want to do this before your phone dies, just in case. So okay. We've got 5 questions we want to ask you. Well, we'll start off with the first one. What's your favorite movie?
Bang the Drum Slowly.
Nice. All right. That's a good one. Your favorite book?
Catcher on the Rye.
Man, that never escaped your high school years, huh?
I didn't even read it in high school. My ex-wife gave it to me after I was out of school.
Any of us
she goes, you need to read this book.
I had to read it, at least get a C in English. All right, let's see here. Favorite television show?
The Rifleman.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. All right, who's your favorite superhero or / comic book character?
Zorro.
Hey,
Yes.
Dude.
What?
Not only did you drop the Nick Cage dime so many times tonight, you're going to be on our best of series at the end of the year, but now you made Icy Zorro's night. Awesome sauce.
My screen name is Icy Zorro.
Ah, great. Awesome.
Sir, what is your favorite video game, James? I'm not Mike this time, right?
Oh,
I think his battery went.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
All
We
of
didn't
us
get
have.
the last question. No. Well, darn it, we lost it. Well, hopefully he'll jump back in. But if you joined us, that's James Intveld, phenomenal person. I just met the guy, but man, I can already tell he's that type of guy where you could sit in front of him for 4 hours and probably just learn life. That's it. Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm hoping we could talk Nudie Rudy into getting him on here again so we could ask some more questions and make sure his phone's charged next time.
Yeah.
But guys, hey, we had some great questions on the feed tonight. I appreciate
Thank you.
all of our guests here. Thank you guys so much. It was awesome. This was a great cast. I appreciated being on it tonight. And I really appreciate Malice Corp for letting us do it because this was fun, and I know everyone on this cast was excited to have it, and it seems like it was a really exciting show tonight with our fans in the Twitch stream. Before we go too long, where can everybody follow this fine cast of assorted characters? We'll start with IC. Where can they follow you at?
Well, you can find me at ICZoro on Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network. We should also figure out where we should follow James Intveld. I think Nudie Rudy might have that info.
Indeed.
Yeah, so Nudie, why don't you tell them where they can follow you, and then totally break away and tell us everything we know about James Intveld.
Well, let's let Ms. Malice go, and then I'll wrap it up after you.
All right, Ms. Malice, go for it.
You can follow me on Twitter at Mrs. Malice 4134 without the
Without the You can follow me at Masonic Vader on Twitch and Masonic Vader or Twitter and Masonic Vader 71 on PlayStation Network. Nudie, where can they follow you? And then end off with James.
Okay, well, you guys can follow me at Nudie Rudy on Instagram, Nudie Rudy on Twitter, and Nudie Rudy on PlayStation Network. Happy to see you guys. And for my cousin James, the man himself, you can just look him up as James Intveld on Instagram, at Intveld James on Twitter, and he does have his own website, jamesintveld.com. And just spelled out for you guys, JamesIntveld. Good name there, James Intveld.
And I'm not going to end there because I'm going to throw out to our guys in the Twitch stream here. HJZ Grok had mentioned also that he also has a Spotify list. So check him out on Spotify, and you can check out his Spotify list on there and listen to some sweet tunes. Thank you. First of all, Nudie Rudy, thank you so much for arranging this. It was much appreciated. Make sure you pass our thanks to James and tell him we will invite him on to another show soon because we want the story to continue. We want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. Make sure you join us next week, same time, 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, Pacific Standard or Pacific Toast, and of course 11 on the East Coast. You can also watch us on YouTube. Make sure you follow, subscribe, like us, 5-star us, listen to us on Stitcher, iTunes, everywhere you can listen to podcasts. You guys stay nerdy. Thank you guys so much.